The announcement landed with the force of a political earthquake. Canada had officially rejected Donald Trump's $7 billion joint military base proposal, and the fallout was immediate, dramatic, and impossible to ignore. What had once been framed as a historic opportunity for deeper defense cooperation between two of the world's closest allies suddenly transformed into a high-stakes geopolitical confrontation. Inside Washington, officials were caught off guard by the firm and public refusal. In Ottawa, leaders stood resolute, signaling that the decision was final and rooted in national interest. Across military and political circles, the message was clear. This was not a minor disagreement over funding or logistics. This was a fundamental divergence in vision about security, sovereignty, and the future of North American defense. The proposed $7 billion joint military base had been positioned as a symbol of strength and unity. Supporters described it as a strategic investment in continental defense, advanced technology, and rapid response capability in an increasingly uncertain world. The base was expected to house cutting-edge defense systems, joint training facilities, and a permanent presence of military personnel from both countries. For months, discussions had taken place quietly behind closed doors, with planners on both sides exploring potential locations, operational frameworks, and long-term benefits. But when Canada's final decision came, it was delivered with unmistakable clarity. The proposal would not move forward. The rejection triggered immediate reaction across political and defense communities. Analysts began questioning what this meant for the long-standing military partnership between the United States and Canada. Markets connected to defense contractors showed early signs of volatility as investors assessed the impact of a canceled multi-billion-dollar project. Diplomatic channels suddenly buzzed with urgent communication as both nations sought to manage the consequences of a decision that could reshape regional security dynamics. Before we dive deeper into why Canada rejected this $7 billion proposal and what it means for Trump, North American defense strategy, and global alliances, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. These dramatic geopolitical developments are unfolding in real time, and staying informed has never been more important as the situation continues to evolve. From the very beginning, the proposal carried significant weight. A joint military base of this scale represented more than infrastructure. It symbolized a deeper level of strategic integration between two nations whose defense cooperation has long been considered one of the strongest in the world. Joint exercises, intelligence sharing, and coordinated operations have defined the relationship for decades. The new base was meant to take that cooperation to an entirely new level, creating a permanent hub for collaboration and rapid response. However, within Canada, concerns began emerging early in the negotiation process. Questions were raised about sovereignty, operational control, and long-term strategic implications. Would the base operate under joint command or predominantly U.S. oversight? How would decisions about deployment and use of advanced systems be made? What impact would a permanent large-scale U.S. military presence have on Canada's independent defense policy? These issues became central to internal debates among policymakers and defense experts. Public sentiment also played a role. While some viewed the proposal as an opportunity to strengthen security and economic investment, others expressed unease about hosting a massive joint military installation. Discussions around environmental impact, local community effects, and the symbolic meaning of such a base intensified. Political leaders faced the challenge of balancing alliance commitments with domestic priorities and public perception. In Washington, expectations had been high that the proposal would move forward. The $7 billion investment was framed as mutually beneficial, promising job creation, technological advancement, and enhanced defense capabilities for both nations. Trump's administration emphasized the strategic value of closer military integration in an era marked by evolving global threats and shifting geopolitical alliances. The rejection, therefore, came as a significant surprise. Reports from inside the White House described a scramble to assess the implications. Advisors weighed potential responses, from diplomatic engagement aimed at reopening discussions to recalibration of defense planning. The cancellation of such a major project left questions about resource allocation, strategic positioning, and the future of bilateral defense initiatives. For Trump, the decision represented not only a policy setback, but also a symbolic challenge to his approach to international partnerships. Defense contractors and industry stakeholders reacted quickly. A project of this magnitude would have involved extensive procurement, construction, and technology development tied to the $7 billion investment. Companies anticipating contracts related to infrastructure, systems integration, and support services suddenly faced uncertainty. Shares of some defense-related firms experienced fluctuations as investors recalculated expectations. The ripple effect extended beyond immediate contractors to supply chains and regional economies that might have benefited from the base. International observers began analyzing the broader implications. The United States and Canada are key members of global defense alliances and maintain close coordination on security matters. A public disagreement over such a significant project raised questions about cohesion and future collaboration. Would the rejection signal a shift toward greater strategic independence for Canada? Would it prompt Washington to pursue alternative arrangements elsewhere? These questions added a new dimension to geopolitical discussions. Canadian officials emphasized that the decision did not signal a weakening of the overall defense relationship. Statements highlighted ongoing commitments to joint operations, intelligence sharing, and mutual security. However, the refusal of the $7 billion base underscored a desire to maintain control over domestic defense infrastructure and strategic direction. Supporters of the decision argued that true partnership requires respect for national priorities and autonomy. In the United States, reactions varied across political and military circles. Some viewed Canada's decision as a missed opportunity for deeper integration and shared capability. Others interpreted it as a reminder that even the closest allies maintain independent strategic calculations. Calls for renewed dialogue emerged alongside suggestions that the U.S. should explore alternative locations or partnerships for expanding its defense footprint. The timing of the rejection added to its impact. Global security concerns have been rising, with nations investing heavily in defense modernization and strategic positioning. Against this backdrop, a canceled joint base project of such scale carried symbolic weight. It highlighted the complexities of alliance management in a world where national interests and global cooperation must constantly be balanced. Media coverage intensified as details continued to emerge. Analysts debated potential reasons behind the decision, from sovereignty concerns to political considerations. Interviews with defense experts explored how the absence of the proposed base might influence regional security planning. Public discourse in both countries reflected a mix of disappointment, support, curiosity, and speculation. Financial markets connected to defense and infrastructure sectors continued to monitor developments. While the broader economic impact remained limited compared to trade disputes, the cancellation of a multi-billion-dollar project still carried significance. Investors considered how defense spending priorities might shift in response. Companies evaluated whether alternative projects could offset lost opportunities. Diplomatic efforts to manage the situation unfolded quietly behind the scenes. High-level communication between officials aimed to prevent the disagreement from spilling into other areas of cooperation. Both nations have strong incentives to preserve a stable and productive relationship across defense, trade, and political domains. Maintaining that stability requires careful messaging and strategic patience. For military planners, the rejection prompted reassessment of future collaboration models. Joint exercises and shared initiatives will likely continue, but the structure and location of major infrastructure projects may be reconsidered. Flexibility and adaptability are essential in maintaining effective partnerships amid evolving circumstances. Public attention remained focused on what the decision signaled about the future. Would this moment lead to new forms of cooperation that respect both nations' priorities? Or would it introduce lasting friction into a historically strong alliance? The answers depend on how leaders navigate the aftermath and shape the narrative moving forward. As days pass, The immediate shock begins to settle into a period of reflection and recalibration. Canada's firm stance demonstrates its willingness to assert national interests, even in the context of close alliances. Washington's response will determine whether the episode becomes a temporary setback or a defining turning point. The $7 billion joint military base proposal may have been rejected, but the broader story of North American defense cooperation continues to evolve. In an interconnected world where security challenges cross borders and alliances shape stability, decisions of this magnitude resonate far beyond the negotiating table. The rejection of the proposal serves as a reminder that partnerships must constantly adapt to changing priorities and perceptions. It underscores the delicate balance between collaboration and sovereignty, between shared goals and independent decision-making. For Trump, for Canadian leadership, and for the global community watching closely, this moment represents more than the cancellation of a project. It represents a test of resilience in one of the world's most important bilateral relationships. How that test is met will influence not only defense planning, but also the broader dynamics of cooperation in an era defined by uncertainty and transformation.